Hi, this is Paul Palmer. Today we're going to be talking about quality management system. As you can see, that's what we have in the background. So what is important about the quality management system? How would you know? How do you know you've done it right? How would you know if you've done it wrong? Well, in the pharmaceutical world, you know you've done it wrong if the regulators say you're not doing it right. But why is that? Why do they often find problems with the quality management system or the pharmaceutical quality system? Either way, it's the same thing. Well, I started using a quality management system back in 1986 in the first company I joined. And we went through a series of different audits and inspections. BS 5750 was the rage at the time in the UK. I supported the FDA inspections, the MHRA inspections, the Anvisa inspections, and a plethora of more when you consider the number of clients that we used to come in and audit as well. However, we had a quality management system to meet the requirements of the regulators. Now, that's an interesting concept. Why do you put documentation in place to meet the regulatory requirements rather than making it work for the business? And I've found over the years that many companies do exactly that. I joined one company, they had a quality management system. They could show me it. But when I asked the team, they didn't know what I was talking about. And the quality management system had been set up purely and simply for audit purposes. And now, this was quite some time ago. And I joined the company and I supported them in basically starting again, looking at what the company was actually doing and revising the procedures, the policies, the workflows, the forms, everything to reflect what the company actually required. And in parallel, meeting the regulatory requirements. So when I look at a quality management system, and I have done several times, that's a bit of an underestimate, I suppose. I did my MSc, my master's in quality management back in 93. I finished 1993, not 2093. We're not there yet. And I was already working on understanding the ISO regulations. I was already working on using inspection by attributes for sampling plans. I was already revising SOPs, work instructions. I was already updating test methods and specifications. I was already working with the regulatory team to ensure that the submissions we put in met the requirements of the regulators and our business. I put together our first proposal, including, of course, all the supporting data for parametric release. That was really uncommon back in the 90s. I did it by putting together all the historical data, working with the team to make sure everything that I had was relevant, was appropriate. And I was the coordinator. I was a cross-functional coordinator, should I say. So I worked with the regulatory team to find out what they needed. I worked with the analytical team to deliver what the regulatory team needed. I worked with the engineering team to deliver what the regulatory team needed. I worked with the production team to deliver what the regulatory team, and it went on. Wherever the data came from, I collated it, put it together for the regulatory submission. And what I realized was there was a disconnect between the regulators, the regulatory team, the regulations, and the business. The business didn't understand what was expected. And I've always made sure from then and since that I look and I understand what the business needs and I understand what the regulators need. And in doing so, I've developed a good understanding of how to meet the requirements of both. Now, back in 2001, 2002, I think it was. Yeah, I wrote a quality management system from scratch. But what's interesting that I wrote it from scratch to meet the requirements of the business and ISO 9001. Now, the reason I did it to meet the requirements of both was because nobody in the team had ever worked to procedures. They'd never worked to quality management system. They didn't have a clue what was expected. So they brought me in with my master's in quality management, of course, which they were pleased with, but also with my auditor's hat on, and also with my wide experience in manufacturing, and also with my experience in validation. And they said, we've got a problem. We're going to lose one of our customers if we don't set up a quality management system. So I did. And over the next several months, I set up a quality management system. But as the head of quality at the time, I also hosted the client audits. And I worked with the clients to understand what their concerns were. And in doing so, I made sure that the procedures we put in place met the requirements of the business so that they could satisfy what the customer needed them to deliver, and also made sure that we covered every aspect of the ISO standard to be able to get the quality management system registered as well. And then I built a team. I built a team to administer what we'd put together and also to maintain it on an ongoing basis so that we had the process they needed. Because this particular company was credit card personalization. Now, credit card personalization, for anybody that knows me, is something I learned from, and not something that I'm passionate about. I'm really passionate about pharmaceuticals. But what I found by joining this credit card personalization, phone card personalization, and IP infrastructure was that I learned about data. I learned about, remember this is back in 2001, I learned about data integrity, about data security, about security systems between one computer and another computer, because it was a service we provided. But I also learned how to make sure the processes and the systems that you put in place meet everybody's requirements. Because there was absolutely no point me putting reams and reams and reams of paper together to train team members that all they were doing was sitting in front of a personalization machine and pressing the button. Nothing else. Okay, they had to load on the cards. Fine. They had to take off the cards. They had to go to the next one electronically. Load the cards, take off the cards electronically. Everything's printed out the other end. Do the checks, make sure it's adhered properly. But in essence, they had really straightforward work activities. So the process we put in place for them, the procedures, were at a suitable level with the right level of detail for them, and they had the forms that they needed to be able to trace through the actions required. So each time they performed a step, they put the information in that they needed to be able to track the batch to the end. Now, they didn't need to know a wider scope. Other people within the team did, but they didn't need to know it. So we didn't set up a system that required them to be cognizant with all the areas that they'd never be involved in. We made sure, sorry about that the system was fit for purpose. We made sure that the right people had the right training and the system worked and we got authorization. BSI, I think it was. But the next time I thought about a quality management system was a pharmaceutical company. It was a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and it was the one that had the system that wasn't implemented or maintained. But I did it again. I started from nothing. I looked at what the company needed and then aligned that with what the regulations needed. And we put together a process that was efficient for the team. But we laid into it where was needed. We integrated into it the expectations of the regulators. And in doing so, we made a really efficient process that we actually rolled out across all 14 sites, central site plus 14 distributor sites. But I implemented a process, a quality management system. And I say I did it because I actually set up the IP link with the IT team, and I utilized I brought in Adobe Dreamweaver so that we could manage the location of all the procedures, which were delivered by PDF, so nobody could edit them. All they could do was use them on screen because they were using them through a browser, not through Adobe. And just mapped the location to the IP address. Now we had write access, and I didn't write everything myself, I suppose. I did get one or two team members to support me with it. But to be honest, in general, in factual fact, I guided all of it. I instructed everybody in what was required and put together a quality management system that was fit for purpose, that was designed specifically for the business and delivered the regulatory requirements. We moved to a new site with a new quality management system and gained approval on first inspection. Now, some people might not think that's significant, but when you consider that prior to us moving into the building, it was used to manufacture aircraft. And I was part of the team that did the design, the layout, the controls, as well as all the systems and processes and the refurbishment of the facility. But I did it from a quality perspective with a good understanding of how it would actually operate, and ensured the documentation reflected that. So if you want to start your own quality management system, pharmaceutical or otherwise, don't rush to the book. Don't rush to say we need to do this form, this form, this form, and adopt the format of the standard or the regulations. Think about what your company needs. Put your structure in place and make sure you meet the requirements of the business primarily and satisfy the requirements of any person, company, or regulator that's going to come to inspect. And what you'll find by taking that approach, rather than just digging it out from the books, is you'll achieve something which your company can work to, and also the regulators will be happy with. That's Paul Palmer. I'll talk to you soon.